Okay, welcome back. I hope that you all had a wonderful second day and feel full with research and inspiration and ideas. I'm here to usher in the more bittersweet feeling of the conference, as my colleague Naomi has educated me on. And this is the time where you feel both hopefully fulfilled and productive because you've had a great few days, but also a little bit sad that it's over, and also maybe happy to be going home. So we are going to have our final session today about experiential POS practices that can carry us forward. So the design of this session is to think about the ways that we can be of service to our colleagues, our students, all of those who we encounter daily, by thinking of the ways that we can help them foster empathy, compassion, and space to be vulnerable. So with that in mind, we have kind of an appetizer flash talk session for you that is designed to give you a taste of the ways that brilliant POS scholars have created useful experiences that people can use and apply in their teaching, in research, and in other practices. So I'm going to introduce the 5 presenters that we will have. And then I'm going to invite everybody up individually to do their presentation. We won't have time for a full panel like we did this morning, but what we're hoping you get out of this session is some ideas on ways that you can translate some of the research that you've been hearing about for the past 2 days into practice. So since she's unable to join us in person today, the first person who will be kind of launching us and centering us today is Tiffany Johnson in a pre-recorded video. She will be talking about how we can use yoga to feel grounded and more in place. And then after that, we will have my co-organizer, Mandy O'Neill, to lead us through a remembrance session that has been inspired by Jason Canoff and Monica Worline and their compassion work. Third, we're going to have Professor Jean Bartunek from Boston College to talk about translating theory into practice, so to really give us the tools to do that. We will have a 4th session, which is another pre-recorded video. So we unfortunately had 2 groups who were unable to make it at the very last minute. Monica Worline and Betsy Irwin, who are the co-directors of Engaged Learning and Innovation at the Center of Positive Organizations, will be talking about fostering a design mindset in POS teaching. And then finally, to bring us home, we have one of the POS co-founders, Jane Dutton, who is a professor emerita at the University of Michigan and the POS Center. And she's going to be talking about how we can map our connections in an exercise on connection Scape. Okay, so I'd like to ask Mandy to first come up to the stage. Oh, actually, first I'm going to play this.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Tiffany Johnson, and I'm an assistant professor at Georgia Tech in Atlanta, Georgia. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here, to the organizer of the conference, to share a snippet of an experiential exercise with you all. I'm really grateful to be able to do so remotely, and sad I can't be there with you in person, but really grateful to be able to share with you and be with you remotely and in spirit. So inspiration for the experiential exercise that I am going to share it comes from Cole Arthur Riley's book, This Here Flesh, book right here. And the inspiration comes from Cole Arthur Riley's discussion of place in the book. She talks about the importance of place and feeling a sense of belonging. And I'll read a couple of parts from the book before we go into our activity. So on page 18, she says, place has always been the thing that made us. We cannot escape being formed by it. And then later on in page 19, she says, the simple beholding of place can slow your heart and steady your breath. It is quite the protective force. The simple beholding of place can slow your heart and steady your breath. It is quite the protective force. So a question that I ask myself and that I pose to all of you is where and what places Do you feel that there's a beholding of yourself where you can study your breath and slow your heart? Particularly within our workspaces, when things happen that are scary or hurtful or even exciting, right? When things happen that are surrounding race-based trauma, we may feel like we lose a sense of place, not because the external environment just disappears, but because we lose a sense of our bodies and of our breath, right? We feel like we can't breathe sometimes, our body might clench up, our body might numb. And so the exercise that I thought we could practice today, that I wanted to invite you to practice with me today, is a practice of finding a sense of internal self, even when, and internal place, even when the sense of external place doesn't feel like it's as beholding, yeah? And so finding this sense of internal place for me as of late, or for the past couple of years, has come through finding the pause, right? Being willing to pause for just about 3 to 4 minutes, maybe even 1, right? Finding a sense of internal place in the pause has been a practice that has been something that I've gone to, that I found helpful when I remember it, right? So not saying I always remember it, but it's something that I try to remind myself of when I can. So I thought we could practice that for just a few minutes today, if that feels right for you. So if you'd like, come to a seat that feels comfortable for you, and sense and notice, imagine your feet wherever they are touching, whatever is beneath them. Sense and imagine whatever is touching, whatever's beneath your feet, especially if you can't feel them. Sense and imagine them. Yeah. Notice, sense, imagine lower legs and upper legs. Notice your hips, your spine. Sense, imagine your spine, the top of your head, your face, the muscles in your face, your shoulders. Notice and sense where they are in space. Maybe notice you're leaning forward quite a bit. I tend to do that. So that prompt usually invites me to bring my shoulders back a little bit, to sit back a little bit. Notice and imagine your heart, your belly, and your hips once more. And then if you'd like, you can take your hands and place one hand on your heart and the other hand either on your belly or on your lap, whatever feels most steadying for you. If you want, you can close your eyes or keep a soft gaze towards the ground. Notice your breath here. Notice the inhale and the exhale and the spaces in between. We'll move into a period of silence for just about a minute. And in this period of silence, the invitation is to, on each inhale, silently say to yourself, I am. And on each exhale, silently say to yourself, here. On each inhale, silently say to yourself, I am. And on each exhale, silently say to yourself, here. Notice where your hand touches your heart and your belly. And silently say to yourself, I am here. I'll be quiet now for about a minute and I'll call us back when time is complete.
Okay, So that's been about a minute. We hope that that helped you feel a little bit more centered, present, and grounded as we move into the next practice session.
Hopefully we're all back here. One of the things about being a POS scholar is that there, especially to people who aren't familiar with the community, there's an assumption that it's only about being positive and it's only about positive emotions. And one of the most interesting things about that community is that from the very earliest of its origins, probably I would say the most famous quote to emerge from this community from one of the co-founders is one from our colleague Peter Frost, and he wrote, "There's always pain in the room." And I've always found this quote particularly powerful because, again, we often only see a part of the surface of what's going on in people's lives and people's worlds, and it's usually people's most innermost worlds, most painful, most vulnerable, that's also the least visible. So I wanted to take a moment now as we're together to just gather our thoughts and our feelings and our memories to think about the pain in the room right now, to think about the pain in our lives. This has been a very difficult few years since the last time we met in person. It's been an exceedingly difficult few years for many people. There's pain that's very, on a societal level, very much of a meta threat sort of pain that we heard about this morning. Some of your phones may have been exploding today with the latest Supreme Court news that is very painful for many people in our society and around the world. Some of us have pain in our institutions, pain in our communities, pain in our families. Let's just take a moment and reflect and really feel and hold those emotions for a minute. Our own, as well as the emotions of others around us. Give space for those feelings, those thoughts, memories. For some of us, the pain is very personal and has to do with the people who are very close to many of us in the positive organizational scholarship community who we've lost in the time since we all last met in person. So just take a moment to honor and to think about and reflect on these scholars and close family members of people integral to our community who we've lost. Earlier there was a presentation about legacy, and many of these people, in their own ways, through their work and through their examples as human beings and in their relationships with others, have left incredible legacies. And it's tempting to think about their legacies and their memories with only sadness and grief. But, I am very close to one of these people, Sigal Barsaid, and it was only a few years ago that we were on the stage here presenting our work on love. And so I wanted to share with you all an image that Sigal put together for that original presentation, which has to do with what would it be like if we thought about the legacy that both these scholars and close family members left, not just for our community and for our scholarship, but for each other and for the relationships that we have with each other and that we continue to. And sometimes it's just the colleague down the hall from us, those of us who are, whether on Zoom or in our little offices, our home offices, whoever. But then what we asked people to think about when thinking about what a culture of love would look like is to think about what would that look like if it wasn't just one relationship with one person, but what if it was relationships with multiple people? Gal was very excited about this animated image. So I thought it would honor her legacy a little bit to share it with you all. And that's what I want us to leave with in this segment, which is that while we're holding space for the pain and the grief, alongside that is the love and the caring and the compassion and the affection that we have for each other and that we can have for new colleagues going forward. And I hope that that's a legacy that our community as positive organizational scholars will leave, even as we honor the people who were close to us that we've lost, and cherish their legacies, but continue on with the love and the relationships that we have with each other and will continue to build going forward. So thank you for that moment. And I think we're ready for our next presenter.
Thank you, Mandy. So I'd like to now welcome Jean Bartunek.
Pardon me. Andy, that was really profound. And I thank you for that. This is switching gears a little bit. I just realized Keith Burnion had been a really good friend of mine. And it was at a POS meeting, I think it was, that I learned he had died, and I was sitting right next to you. Do you remember that? And you had us change the whole focus of the session, of the small session we were in. So Mandy clearly practices what she's talking about. So thank you for quite a lot on this. And I have to say that this presentation is going to switch gears. Quite a bit. So when Mandy invited me to talk, I said, without even reading what she wrote, sure. Then I think I had some help from Chelsea coming up with a topic, but exercises? What the world was that? Fortunately, I got some help on that topic. A couple of weeks ago, I went to a high school class reunion from the Academy of the Sacred Heart in Cincinnati, Ohio. I graduated a long time ago. The school isn't even open anymore, but we still have class reunions. You can get a sense of what my high school uniform looked like. But what was really wonderful was that one of my classmates, Sherry O'Brien, was there, and she had brought for me, I was the only one who came from out of town for this, she had brought for me the copy she had saved for several decades of our high school geometry textbook, which was spectacular. So I started looking at this, and I started thinking, I wonder if my high school geometry text was a forerunner of POS, because I was reading all this stuff about what the interest is one of the greatest motivating forces in the study of any subject. It's essential for the successful study of geometry. All these things about how the text gets a student excited about geometry that, to the best of my knowledge, hasn't been tapped as much as it might in this group. But there was also something extra, which is I only got 2 A's in high school, all through, and one of them was in geometry. And I started looking through this book, and I started thinking, I have no idea what this is talking about, but I know how to do this once. So I felt really proud of myself. So that's great. It's not exactly a tool for translating theory to practice, but close enough. So let's actually talk about that particular scholarly detail, which is a few years ago, I got an invitation from Sim Sitkin, who was and may still be the editor of a journal called Behavioral Science and Policy that tries to take scholarly research and presented in short, accessible articles with actionable policy applications. So he invited me to write something for that journal. Right about that time, Liz Hood, who was a first-year doctoral student, said, yeah, I'm not working with you, but can we write a paper together? So, the timing was great. So I said, sure, this is going to be easy. We can just do it. And this particular article was actually a lot newer than it is now. But I thought, what a great opportunity to take this theory and figure out some policy applications for it. We could do that. Now, how do you do that, though? This is not exactly tools, but what exercises are involved in turning theory into practice? Here is from, there are a ton of exercises in here, but I didn't want to, drag you through too much. I just wanted to do ones I could still remember how to do. So let me ask you each to do this, because this is supposed to be practical. Imagine yourself putting a point P on a paper and drawing a line through P. How many lines can you draw through P? Anybody want to guess? Somebody brave? Infinite. Yay, great answer. Wonderful. Outstanding, in fact. Now let's take something a little harder. Place 2 points, A and B, on a paper, and with a ruler draw a line through them. How many lines can be drawn through the 2 points? One. Great. Somebody was going to ask some nuanced thing, but This is my Bible on this. And finally, draw a curved line through 2 points, A and B. How many curved lines can be drawn through 2 points? What? 2. No, more than 2, lots more than 2. Infinite, great. See, you all are wonderful. You can pass high school geometry now. So you may not see the immediate connection, but there really is. So, well, there sort of is, and I'll show you. But this was a small part of the AMR paper, and this is what we were focusing on, which is when you're talking about affective responses to something, it includes 2 dimensions. One of them is how positive or negative it is, the valence, and the other is how much energy there is with it. So just very briefly, if you could see this, lots of energy and really negative involves change resistance. Lots of energy and really positive means proactive, excited, elated, enthusiastic. Change disengagement means, oh, this is useless, this is helpful, I feel awful. And change acceptance means, great, let's just do it. I believe yesterday afternoon there was a behavioral change in this meeting when, although it wasn't in the program, somebody said, why don't we come out over there and have some champagne and a toast? And I believe there was a fair amount of change acceptance demonstrated. So, from a geometric perspective, a circumplex has some really interesting properties. It has more than these, but I don't want to challenge you too much. What kind of line is this? Straight line. Good. What kind of line is this? You're brilliant. You're brilliant. And there's also an intersection in there, but I didn't, whatever. So have you had any experiences of the following? Now, I'm just going to ask quickly. You yourself, have you ever, raise your hand or not or whatever, have any of you ever resisted change? Oh my. Have any of you ever helped a change? Great. Have any of you ever just said, oh, the hell with it? Have ever you said, okay, well, see, you know everything there is to know, but let's also think about the times when you've initiated a change. Have you ever had other people resist what you're doing? Yeah, that's awful when they do that. When you do it, it's fine, but you know. Have any of you ever said, great, I'll help out? Pardon me, had other people say, great, I'll help out to your change. Great. Any of you just said, oh, the hell with it, I'm just disappearing. Okay, and have any of them ever said, okay? Well, I think you all, I just want to make one comment that you all are more actively involved in change than other people are. I'd just like to comment on that. But see, what you're already talking about is translating theory into practice. The question is, of course, if we have to write this article, how do we describe the processes so actually people can understand it and by examples? But it's also obvious that doing this, accomplishing this takes some exercise, takes some practice, and exercises are supposed to be repeated, right? So just briefly, as Liz and I were going through writing the paper, we had a few repeated exercises. And so the question is, practically speaking, do you think of multiple drafts to respond to what you're supposed to do as exercises to which you keep getting better? That is a rhetorical question. I don't want you to answer it out loud. But also, in translating theory into practice, we can locate editorial responses on our circumplex. So the first submission, thank you, yada, yada, yada. This is, the topic is swell. However, the draft sucks. So we're giving you a reject and resubmit. Sam, you told me this was going to be easy. Where does that fit on the affective circumplex? It's clearly resistance to change, resistance to everything we're doing, and it's pretty much they gave us a D- because they said reject and resubmit. The second submission. We've reviewed your manuscript submission, all that kind of stuff. And amazingly, it has magically transformed. So you only have to make a few relatively minor, which were not quite so minor, but, and this is a kind of change proactivity. We've changed our mind. We're now going to help you do this. Of course, there's a lot for you to do, so I figured they were sort of giving us a B. The third submission, this is all, years in between these things. Congratulations, your manuscript has been accepted, pending a final round of copy editing. This felt to us like this is actually change acceptance, and we're sending somebody else off to do the stuff that you need to do to help you do it. So we figured this is an A-. This is great. Now, you will notice that I've dealt with 3/4 of the affective circumplex. The one I've left off is the one that I have most often experienced, and perhaps you have too, when the response is rejected, period. Not a chance, you're losers. To which the only appropriate response is what, you probably can't see it here, but Sherry had written this on the front page of her book. So I recommend, in case of doubt, pick out Sherry's response, and that's the only way to respond to editors who are like that. We did have lots of tutors for the last part who basically did a ton of work to translate what we were doing into English for the average human being. This isn't even anywhere near close to all of the examples they used. But I would give them an A+, because we understood what we were talking about better at the end of their work. So we're at the almost final result. This thing is actually in press, I think. And guess what? Liz still has a year to go as a doctoral student. So it took her less than 10 years. I just like one final learning about geometry and translation. Think of how many curved lines you've drawn between 2 points whenever you've been working on an article. however you've been working on it. And the other thing, if ever you need a positive pick-me-up, I discovered that Sherry had her name written here, but at first it had belonged to somebody named Judy McDowell. There's a possibility that I knew who Judy McDowell was once, although I can't guarantee it. But I'm thinking, you know, Sherry passed this on to me. After you give me a little while to see if I could possibly do some of this stuff again, even without a protractor, anybody who needs it picked up, please let me know, and I'll be happy to pass it on to you, and then you can pass it on to others who need it. Okay? So, thank you.
That was awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, so I am now bringing us into our fourth POS practice. As I mentioned at
Compassion.
Understand.
I don't know what that was. As I mentioned at the beginning, unfortunately, Monica Worline was unable to travel here. And so they recorded their presentation virtually, which I want to play for you now. I think we're just queuing it up.
Empowerment.
Compassion.
Understanding. Uplifting.
Magnificent.
Life-changing. Many of you are teachers. So what would you do if you found out with less than a month's notice that your popular, successful, intensive action learning program that runs for 6 hours a day, 4 days a week, across 6 very action-packed weeks, with 50 energetic students and 10 real organizations doing action field research and sharing their findings, had to suddenly become an entirely computer-mediated experience. I know you had this experience too, but here is the response of my magnificent colleague, Betsy Irwin.
Hi everybody, I'm Betsy. I'm sitting this morning in my garden. It's early in the morning, the birds are chirping, my chickens are squawking a bit, wanting to get out of their coop and run around my yard. My husband's a really avid gardener, and at this time of year, at the beginning of May in Michigan, there's so much potential in the garden. And often I think about gardening, and many of us do, and the analogy of gardens when we think about positive organizational scholarship, and especially Magnify. I think about the soil, the good, healthy soil we've created with our Canvas site in our Zoom classroom. I think about the strong seedlings that we've selected for our class in all of you, just like the strong seedlings that we're planting now.
The architect Charles Eames suggests that one of the few keys to design is the ability to recognize as many constraints as possible and then discover the willingness, nay, the enthusiasm for working within these constraints. Design in learning environments and our practice as POS teachers and scholars isn't about drawing pretty pictures or using lots of sticky notes. When you dig under the surface, design involves creating an environment that brings out, simply by entering its life world, our curiosity, our human wonder, our holistic viewpoint, even as we know the distinctions. Design in our work is a healthy dose of playfulness and a real striving for success and delight, beauty, even love. Carol Dweck defines a mindset as a self-theory that colors everything about us as we hold it. So Betsy and I want to invite you to reignite joy in your practice by embracing and developing and strengthening a design mindset, a way of being, relating, and working together that focuses on our capacity to realize anything through an enthusiastic embrace of all the constraints we face, coupled with a relentless belief in the possibility inherent in everything. Betsy and I have learned a simple way to tip ourselves back into a design mindset when we lose our way. Ask yourself 3 things and fill in the blanks with me. I like introducing the topic of culture to students by pointing to the materiality of culture and asking them to use their senses to engage artifacts in new ways. I wish there were a way to do this on Zoom more compellingly so that all of this exhaustion didn't just get worse. So I wonder, hey, Betsy, I wonder if exploring an unexpected culture would work. This is an off-the-wall idea, but I read about this graffiti workshop that's offered by a street artist over Zoom. Do you think we could try it? Oh, by the way, it turns out that the graffiti artist is an amateur ethnographer gathering data in the New York subways and writing a book. And the quasi-legal subcultures within street art are excellent at sparking discussion among burned out, zoomed out students who suddenly don't want this particular Zoom day to end.
There we go. Yeah, I mean, until whatever confluence of miraculous things came together that allowed my wonderful colleagues and incredible doctoral students to all show up kind of at the same time in 2020 and to sort of try to reinvent a space where we could feel alive and safe and whole. It just feels like one of the best things that happened in my life. And just, sorry, I don't mean to get so emotional, but just seeing what you just saw in these 4 presentations just reminds me of the possibility that we can make, as teachers and researchers, we play such a role as designers. And, we can do so many wonderful things that have so much incredible impact on others. And so I just have to say, thank you. Thank you to the presenters. And it's just having Betsy and Monica do this right before me is just also so perfect because the 2 of them, I've had the privilege of teaching with the 2 of them, and I thought it was an old teacher that did just fine. But until they entered my life, I had no sense of what was possible. And what you saw on there is the way they have created these programs at Michigan that if you walk in them, you feel the difference. It's not just that you see and experience, and the knowledge. You feel it in a way that's just gorgeous. It's gorgeous and it's really impactful. And my slides are gorgeous because Monica did them. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about the power and possibilities in creating a landscape of connection. And I love this title too because, again, another self-disclosure. I think I've said this to many people. I think in a former life I was a matchmaker because there is nothing I like more than connecting people. And so creating a tool or sort of thinking in terms of connection, which has been one of the joys, research joys, of it just really fits my former life. So this is something, even though I'm going to talk, this is something, I want to talk to you about something that Monica and I have created together. We're kind of having a blast at this life stage because I'm retired, semi, and Monica is the CEO of this gorgeous company called Enlighten that creates all these gorgeous materials that educates all kinds of people about flourishing at work. So we really have fun doing this together. And so I wish you were here. Okay, let me set the scene for what I'm going to share about you. So I taught for 20 years a course on managing professional relationships. And in the course of doing that, I can't even remember if I created it or if someone else created it. You know how these things happen. You borrow and bend things and stuff. As part of that course, I had people sit and at their tables, grab a piece of paper. In fact, I would ask you to do the same, but I didn't tell you to bring a piece of paper. And do a high quality connection audit. So it means write down the initials of the people in your life now who you consistently have a high quality connection with. You're not going to share it with anyone, just do it. And you watch sort of what happens to people, as they try to think about this. It's actually not so easy. And people are oftentimes surprised that there aren't as many people or initials on the sheet of paper as they would like. And so what that spawns is a whole conversation. First they have in small groups, and then we have more broadly about who's not on your list and why are they not on your list? And even most importantly, what might you do to get those people on your list? Well, that was such a successful exercise. I've always been like, whenever I can have the excuse to use it, I do it, and I usually do it for myself. It's been really pretty transformational for me. Okay, so then I'm co-teaching with Monica. So I do this exercise. I'm co-teaching with Monica last year. It's all virtual. We're teaching this Flourishing at Work class. And she, as she usually does, says, oh, we've got to create something beautiful for the students that's really going to have a lasting impact. So she helped me reinvent this high quality connection audit. Wait till you'll get a sense to see it. It's gorgeous. And I think it's really impactful. At the same time, I'm retired. When I first retired, I know I've been this for 40 years. I mean, it really was an identity loss and kind of an identity grieving. I felt, especially in the context of COVID, really lonely. It just was really, like everybody, really hard. But because I'd left my career and my job, it felt especially lonely. But at the same time, I had so much freedom. I had so much time, whatever. So the idea of designing an experience for myself, we had already designed this experience, but then trying it myself at this particular time just turned out to be really powerful. So there's a couple assumptions that are behind the exercise. I'm going to call it the connection scape. One is that when we're in times of stress or times of transition, we get resource depleted. And at the same time, high quality connections or these life-giving connections that we can have with people, and for those of you who don't use that term, and what I'm trying to get us to think about, these small bits of interactions that compose a relationship, but they resource us physiologically, psychologically, socially. And I have Emily Heafy down here because she's just also been such an important collaborator with me on this work. And therefore, this idea of taking stock of your current connection landscape is really helpful in guiding our thought and action. And this idea that, and I love this idea by Joanne Sundin and Arne Carlson, is that each of us has relational agency. In other words, we can engage micro moves that actually increase the probability that we can have more high quality connections if we're doing kind of that audit of connections. So there were a couple of goals when I applied the connection scape to me, and when we thought about creating these tools. One was to increase my awareness, or anybody who's using its awareness of their current connection health, and also their current, it sort of gives us a sense of the potential. It helps to remind us that we can be more intentional in both developing and strengthening our connection targets and moves. And as again, if we created a tool, would this really help other people in the same way that it had helped me? And then making the tool, as I've already suggested, there's the Monica factor, which you see in these slides. And that is, it has to be gore. It has to induce awe is sort of part of the idea. So here's what the connection scape looks like if you were to do it. First of all, it uses this landscape kind of image as a way to, again, express the vastness of the potential, but also to remind us that we are alive and we're in an alive space, and that we hope for ourselves, we hope for others that our connection scape is beautiful and that it is healthy and that it is replenishing. So here there are 4 steps in the connection scape. The first one is simply to identify the life-giving connections that you have with other people. Those are what typically called the high-quality connection. And what the tool allows you to do is just put the initials that we use in the high-quality connection audit. You're actually just putting them on this field. And there are a number of questions that you can ask of people that people find really, I can tell from teaching with this, really therapeutic or helpful in some ways. Do you notice any patterns that relate to the set of people that show up? Are these people that came to you in a particular point in your life? Are these people that you're co-located with? It gets you really started reflecting of like, what is it, people that you interact with face-to-face, not virtual? There's just a zillion sort of introspection about about basically the healthy connection part of your landscape. But we invite people to think about the connections that are neutral. And we're reminding people all the time that in fact this is dynamic. We're just taking a snapshot today. If you do it 2 weeks from now, 4 weeks, it might be different. But to actually place the initials of people that you have neutral connections with, in part because we're trying to surface up or make more visible the set of people that in people's attentional field they're in some ways aware of. The third step is to identify the fallow connections, those connections that you had with other people that at one time were hopefully positive, but they could have been negative, but they've just sort of dormant. They're different than neutral. These are the ones that for me have changed my life in my retirement. I have been tilling these fallow connections, and that is why, honestly, I feel so great. So the fallow connections are a really important category of connections. And finally, have to have people identify their life depleting connections and sort of think, again, kind of the same way about, is there anything meaningful in this pattern of these connections? So I just invite 2 things about this tool. I'm going to give you a link. I guess you'll be able to get copies of these slides to where you can get it. The way it's set up right now, you have to pay for it, so I feel it's $15. Sorry about that. I can probably sneak you a copy if you want to take it. But it's really just a systematic way for people to go through and take stock primarily so it will motivate us and give us a way to approach how we can lift up our connection scape in a way that makes it healthier. So the impacts of it was for me when I did it, it created this incredible appreciation of the richness of my connection landscape. Again, even the fact that I was lonely, I still reminded me that I have all these possibilities, an appreciation that it's dynamic, so I'm not stuck. I have agency, and I definitely, as part of doing it myself, moved intentionally away from the depleting connections. And that was really empowering as well for me. And then, as I suggested, the sheer joy from recultivating these fallow connections. So so just some think abouts to leave you with. What does your connection scape look like? And again, you don't have to buy the tool. You can do the same thing I did for many years, the high quality connection audit, where you have people do. It's a home run with students. It's so useful. And the students I'm teaching are, executives as well as some wonderful undergraduates. Also, might it help you develop some micro strategies to improve your well-being and performance. Like, I don't know if any of you, like so many people that I love and care about and have contact with, have been going through anxiety and other sorts of hard times. But how many of you have thought about just changing the structure of your day so that you have more of these connections that are life-giving? How might you keep yourself focused on and accountable for improving your connection landscape? And finally, and this is what I want to leave you with, because I think that, again, as I look at the magnificent and thank the incredible designers of this conference, I think they have played a role in contributing positively to all of our connection-scapes through this conference. And that is a worthy thing for all of us to do. So thank you.
So I have just one last thing to say to you guys before this part of the session is over. First, I want to thank our presenters for bringing us these practices. So thank you, Jane and Jean. And I also want to let you know that you'll be getting an email at exactly 4:30. That is a survey that is asking you things. But the most important thing for you we would like you to take the survey. But one of the most important things, especially for those of you who are new, this is your first POS conference, is at the close of the survey, you'll be redirected to the Community of Scholars page for POS. So please make sure that you put in your email address so that you can become aware of all of the wonderful things the POS Center is doing, these teaching tools, more research opportunities, collaboration opportunities. There's also a link directly in the email. So if you want to just go ahead and make sure you're on that list before you take the survey, that would be great as well.
Thank you. All right, thanks everyone. How are you doing? That's not quite good. You are not going home until this is completely coordinated in a way that I like. Let's try again. How are you doing?
Outstanding.
Excellent, excellent. That was a lot better. So it's been 2 full days, and it feels like longer than that. I think I've really enjoyed myself interacting with all of you, especially the doctoral students and the new faces that I have never met, and this was a wonderful opportunity to connect. And so we thank you for coming and making this such an unforgettable event and milestone in the history of our POS community and research. And we hope that you leave inspired by the people you met, by the research that you were exposed to, and by the potential and what is possible, as Jane says. We hope that you connected and reconnected with long-term colleagues and had the opportunities to meet and build new connections and relationships. And we're grateful, very, very grateful for the time and talents of so many wonderful individuals who helped to ensure the success of this conference. As I said before, it is a lot of work to make this work. So thank you. Thank you to all our research track leaders whose work began last fall with the review of the submitted abstracts and continued as they built and shaped their sessions. Thank you to all our panelists for their valuable insights on such important and timely topics. And thank you, Gretchen Spreitzer and our Dean's Office for their ongoing support of this very important event. And thank you to our 2022 conference organizing team. I would like to invite you back up on the stage to present a small token of appreciation from Dave Mayer, handwritten by Dave Mayer, for all your time and energy to bring this conference to life. Can you all give them a round of applause and standing ovation, please? Thank you. Thank you so much. So Briana first, and Mandy. Yes. Where is Courtney? Yeah, Christina, Serenity, and Brittany. Thank you so much. I know this was a lot of work, and in addition to what you organized last year, right? And so I am very, very grateful, and I'm sure everyone here is incredibly grateful for the connection that we were able to make today. So thank you so much. And lastly, I would like to thank our CPO staff members, Angie Seeley and Gabriella Ring, for their work to fully execute this wonderful vision of the conference organizing team. So could you please come upstairs? Thank you. Thank you. You really, truly. There you go, Angie. These are the individuals who really deserve a standing ovation. So thank you so much for doing this. And I hope that we all continue to do this every time we celebrate something. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone. We will be in touch with you with all of the details about the upcoming gathering at the Academy of Management. It's likely Sunday, nice and early on Sunday morning, but the details will be confirmed and sent out to you. So see you in Seattle. Thank you very much and safe travels. Thanks, everyone.